growing up, I never wanted to get married. I didn't have like fully formed ideas about it. It just wasn't something that I had thought about, and it wasn't something that, like, it just seemed a bit of an odd thing to do in my kid brain. And Mr. Love was actually my first boyfriend, my first partner of any kind. And before I met him, I had no interest in I had been intimate with people, but not in a relationship, because I just hadn't found anyone that I like wanted to do that with. And as I mentioned in my previous video, the idea of like being called a wife is weird to me. And for me, like referring to Mr. Love as my husband, literally to this day, it's been years and years and years, and I'm still like, but we decided to do it. As I said in the other video, I was young. We were both young, relatively speaking. And it was kind of on a whim. Like it was we were actually at another friend's wedding. It was an engagement party that like turned out to be a surprise wedding. And when we were there, we were like, what is engagement? What is marriage? What do all these things mean? Because I'd never really thought about it before. And we were talking about it, and we were like, I guess it just means that we'd like to be together for a long time, or until we don't want to be anymore. And then we were like, well, I guess that means that we are engaged. Because if we want, like, we just kind of were like, okay. So then we went out and bought some rings and called it a day. But then everyone was like, when's the wedding? And we were like, oh, okay, now we're going to do a wedding. Right. Okay. And like, we went along with it. And it was good fun. Like, don't get me wrong. It was an absolute blast. We did an excellent wedding, if I do say so myself. But not long after, we went to our friend's house, and there's two gay guys, and they were talking about how cool it is that we got married, and we were like, yeah, whatever. And they were like, oh, I would just love to be able to call him my husband. I would love to be able to be his husband. And so the key here is that we got married before Australia had marriage equality. And I was always very supportive of marriage equality, of course. But I guess it wasn't until that moment that I realized what it meant to some people, because I just thought marriage was like not a big deal, and being, having a husband, I was like, whatever. And it was in that moment that it clicked to me that these words that I have total access to and all this privilege around, that I actually don't want, I totally take for granted, are actually words that mean so much to some people. And at that point in time, those people didn't have access to them. So that made me feel like a deep regret at that point. I wish we'd waited until after we had marriage equality, at least.